Good afternoon. We will now call the special meeting of the Waco City Council, June 30th, 2020 to order at 1:36 p.m. Joining me online today are Mayor Pro Tem Andrea Bearfield, Councilmember Hector Savito, Councilmember John Kennard, Councilmember Jim Holmes, and Councilmember Dylan Meek. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state disaster declaration expires. In accordance with distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this Waco City Council meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded, and video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the governor and attorney general, statutes that may require face-to-face interactions between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to submit their comments to the city secretary office today by 11 a.m. The city secretary will read any such comments into the record at the appropriate time. Now, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Esmeralda, have we received any public comments on any agenda items?
Yes, sir. We received one public comment for Resolution 2020-428.
Okay, we will. 428?
Yeah, no.
426.
426.
Okay, we'll take that when we get to that resolution. If it's okay with council, I'd like to consider the resolution added by addendum before the work session presentation. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay, then we will consider resolution 2020-428. This is a resolution consenting to the continuation of the declaration of local disaster and public health emergency issued on March 17, 2020 and amended on March 19, 2020 and March 23, 2020 by Mayor Kyle Deaver, and as ordered by the City Council of the City of Waco, Texas on March 24, 2020, and as extended and are modified on March 31st, April 14th, April 21st, April 28th, May 7th, May 19th, May 28th, and June 23rd. Altogether, the city order, and as may be amended or supplemented by the City Council of the City of Waco today, Waco, Texas, and modifying the city order in compliance with the orders of Texas Governor Greg Abbott for a phased reopening of businesses. Is there a motion on that resolution?
I'll move approval. Second.
Any discussion? So this is simply extending the orders that have been issued to a July 28th date, unless we either rescind them earlier or extend them beyond that period of time. Any other comment?
This is Holmes. It's going through the 7th right now, right? Next Tuesday. We're just extending it 3 weeks, and we will have 2 opportunities, if you will, in the first 2 council meetings of July to modify it, rescind it, whatever, and look at the data and see what direction we're going. But yeah, right now I think it's the right thing to do. The data is kind of going the wrong direction, and let's do what we can to curb this thing. I support it.
I agree, Jim. I just we typically have not waited till the day that it's expiring to extend it, and I think it's fair to the public to know that it will be extended further if that's our action today. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I guess nobody's opposed because everybody raised their hands. All right. Thank you all very much. We will now move to work session 2020-426. And Dylan, are you going to leave us here at this point?
I might duck out in a minute, but I'm going to start off. But I might have to duck out in a little bit, guys. Just FYI, but I'll stick around for as long as I can. Okay, thank you. Work session 2020-426. I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer, but first I want you all to know that I have filed an affidavit of substantial interest on this item, so I will not be discussing this. Jennifer?
Yes.
Esmeralda, I understand we did receive a comment on this item.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir, and I'll read that comment. This is from Alan Northcutt, MD, on item 2020-426. As Director of the Waco Friends of the Climate, I strongly recommend the inclusion of rooftop solar on the dormitory if the roof is acceptable for this construction. Reasons: 1, energy cost savings to TSDC in the long term. 2, TSDC has a solar installation program, and this would serve an instructional opportunity. 3, in 2020, rooftop solar should be mandatory and in some states is required on all buildings. 4, during our climate crisis, rooftop solar is a powerful step to mitigating global warming. Please consider this proposal seriously before voting. And that's all I have, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. I'll ask Jennifer to take over this presentation, please.
So, Mayor and Council, Dan Pleitz, who's the attorney for TSTC, was not able to join us remotely today as he's out of town. And so you'll have materials in your packet that describe what this process is. And y'all have seen this process in other contexts before, which is to get tax-exempt bonds through one of these agencies, they have to get the local government's approval. And so this is a process where the entity comes and gets your approval. You will see in your packet an email from Glenn Opal, who is our bond counsel, saying that we have no liability for this. It's merely an approval for them to get the tax-exempt bonds. And to the extent I can, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We'll now move to work session. Wiley.
Okay, Mayor and Council, good afternoon. Our first, I guess, only work session item this afternoon is has to do with the discussion of the operating budget and the CIP program. And I'm going to turn the discussion and the lead off to Deputy and incoming City Manager Bradley Ford.
Thanks, Wiley. It's been a fun budget season so far. Certainly not what as we opened up the conversation earlier this year, it's a very different budget than we anticipated having to talk about. So I won't talk too much on this introduction because we have a lot to cover. Primarily, you're going to be led through a discussion by Isaiah Perez. You're going to hear updates from our team on a variety of topics, including the enterprise funds, sales tax modeling, and actually an updated budget calendar. Isaiah will certainly be walking us through all that. Additionally, you're going to hear from a new staff member later on, and you might be aware that new staff member is Paul Diaz. He's come to our team serving as our budget manager after spending a few years in Georgetown in the same role. He's a graduate of university here in Waco, which is exciting. He's also a proud Baylor alum, as noted by his face covering today. I met Paul about 5 years ago. We shared a stage at a convention and talked about sales tax modeling. And I'll just be honest, he was by far the more informative presenter that day. And that's why he'll be walking us through his recent efforts to improve our sales tax modeling. So Isaiah, will you kick us off?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. For today's agenda, we'll be reviewing enterprise funds, update on fees and outside entities, and a preliminary review of CIP that may be supported with general debt. First, I'd like to quickly define enterprise funds. They are funds that account for services that derive a portion of their income through user charges. They involve a fee for service. And GASB 34 required that an activity be accounted for an enterprise fund if it's financed with debt that is backed by fees generated by that activity. The donut chart reflects the FY20 adopted expenditure budget, which totaled $82 million for all enterprise funds. The $82 million is the budget net of interfund transfers. Today's focus will be on the airport, Texas Ranger Hall of Fame, transit, zoo, and golf funds. We also plan to revisit the solid waste, convention center, and utility funds that we discussed on our June 2nd work session. In the airport fund, airport staff recommends and manages improvements to the airport infrastructure, monitors the leasing of lands, and ensures all regulations and grant insurance are in compliance. For both fiscal years, the airport will receive FAA CARES Act funding that will support operating and capital costs. The major FY20 project projection adjustments include increase in capital expenses, a reduction of general fund support, an increase in interdepartmental billing to the general fund driven by ARF general fund expenses. Both the reduction in transfers in and increases to general fund billings will have a favorable impact on general fund operations. Similar to FY20, the FY20 major base budget adjustments include increases in capital expenses, the elimination of transfers in from the general fund, an increase in interdepartmental billings due to the general fund driven again by the ARF general fund expenses. The FY21 preliminary ending fund balance is $2.28 million. From an operating perspective, the airport fund is 100% self-sufficient for FY 2021. In other words, the FY 21 operating revenues cover the FY 21 operating expenses. As previously communicated per our airport staff, the FY 20 and FY 21 planned capital is listed in the tables within the slide. All the projects align with our airport master plan. The Texas Ranger Hall of Fame is home of the nation's.
Excuse me, this is Holmes.
Yes, sir.
If I have a question on any of these, you want to wait till the end or interrupt at each one, or what would you prefer? I don't want to screw up your flow.
I don't mind the interruption.
Okay, on the airport fund, and I'm looking at page 12 of the the meeting packet. If we're talking about CARES funding, covering a lot of these revenues, where does that show up in our budget? Because don't we have? I would have thought that it was shown up in transfers in.
Yes, sir. So what you see on the income statement for the airport fund, I just want to make sure you're looking at the airport fund income statement.
Yeah.
That was part of the handout. What you don't see is the CARES Act funding there is because we've carved out the CARES Act funding into a different fund, which is the Airport CARES Funding CIP fund. So that's a better way for finance to track the CARES Act funding coming into the city and what projects are linked to that funding. So we can definitely provide you that income statement when it's built out. But for right now, what you see in the airport fund O&M is just the O&M portion.
And I might add to that, there is some CARES in intergovernmental, and that allows that interdepartmental billing increase. That's where Isaiah was mentioning, and that we will actually be able to reimburse the general fund for the R as well as police security. So the majority of the CARES money is going to be in a capital CIP fund, but the part that is related to some operating funds will be in intergovernmental in that.
All right, thanks, Jen. I see that now. I was looking for it in the transfers, but it's in intergovernmental because it is covering these expenditures at the bottom, right? The salaries and wages, and then some of the stuff that we talked about in previous meetings. So it makes sense for it to show up in intergovernmental. I get it. Thanks.
All right. The Texas Ranger Hall of Fame is home of the nation's oldest law enforcement historical center and represents the legendary Texas Rangers. Due to COVID in FY20, staff is anticipating a revenue reduction in charges for services and net merchandise sales. There are no planned changes in the transfers in support from the general fund and convention center. And Texas Ranger Hall of Fame staff has identified $193,000 in departmental savings that will offset some of the revenue loss for FY20. In FY21, staff anticipates COVID to continue to have an impact on Texas Ranger Hall of Fame. Staff is estimating a revenue reduction in charges for services and net merchandise sales. Similar to FY20, there are no planned changes in transfers in support from the general fund and convention center. The FY21 preliminary ending fund balance is $416,829. For FY21, the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame is 40% operating self-sufficient. This bar graph illustrates the FY20 attendance by month. As the graph illustrates, COVID had a negative impact on Texas Ranger Hall of Fame attendance beginning in March. The June attendance is as of June 28th. The Waco transit system provides.
I just got one quick comment on this one too. This is Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is one. I think if you look at the year over year from 2018 to 2019, I mean the trends on this thing were going beautifully, and Byron is running a great operation over there. But with the I-35 construction, I mean, just was tough, and then COVID on top of that.
Yes, sir.
I want to commend him for, this is a good budget here, and it's a little bit, it seems, ambitious here, but I'm confident that he can, as long as everything opens back up, that Byron can get it going there. But yeah, he's had some tough, I guess everybody has, but that one has been pretty bad as far as having challenges thrown at him on revenue streams. But anyway, this looks good.
The Waco Transit System provides the public with mass transportation services. Similar to the airport fund, transit will be receiving CARES Act funding to assist with the loss of revenues due to COVID. The major FY20 projection adjustments include CARES Act funding of $3.14 million, a reduction of general fund support, and as a reminder, there was a budget amendment for the bus rapid transit of $1.2 million that will increase transit revenue and will be offset by the capital expense. Overall, for FY20, staff is anticipating a loss of revenue of $1.67 million driven by COVID. There are anticipated fuel savings due to less activity in FY20 of $350,000. Similar to FY20, the FY21 major base budget adjustments include additional CARES Act funding. Staff continues to review the funding capability for FY21, a reduction in revenues due to COVID, a new payroll system request in amount of $170,000, and the FY21 preliminary ending fund balance is $736,949. For FY21, transit is 98% operating self-sufficient. Similar to the Waco transit system, rural transit provides the public with mass transportation services but connects the rural communities. The major FY20 projection adjustments include CARES Act funding of $637,000. Overall, for FY20, staff is anticipating a loss of revenue of $312,000 driven by COVID, and there are anticipated debarkable savings due to less activity in $470,000. Similar to FY20, the FY21 major base adjustments include additional CARES Act funding, a reduction in revenues due to COVID, and for FY21, transit is 100% operating self-sufficient. Staff continues to review the FY21 rural financials. Due to COVID in FY20, staff is anticipating a revenue reduction in charges for services and net merchandise sales for the zoo fund. Staff is recommending an additional support from the general fund of $700,000. This would bring the FY20 total general fund support to $3.4 million. For FY21, staff anticipates COVID to continue to have an impact on zoo. A revenue reduction in charges for service and net merchandise sales is anticipated. Staff is recommending additional support from the general fund in the amount of $150,000. The FY20 total general fund support would be $2.85 million, including the additional $150,000. The FY21 preliminary ending fund balance is $112,153. For FY21, the zoo fund is 34% operating self-sufficient. This line graph illustrates the impact COVID has had on zoo admissions. For October through February of the current fiscal year, admissions were trending higher than the past two fiscal years, which is represented in the purple line from October through February. As the graph reflects, COVID has had a major impact on zoo admissions from March through May. Unfortunately, the impact was during the zoo peak season. This table reflects the proposed FY21 fee changes for zoo admissions. The fee change is 50 cents per admissions that would result in additional zoo revenue of $114,960. With COVID, we anticipate that revenue to be 25% less than originally calculated, bringing our net FY21 additional revenue to $86,220. The golf
I mean, on the zoo, sorry, Isaiah. Yeah, on the zoo, just it's I've groused in the past about the increased general fund contribution to the zoo, but I think our new director Chris and Bradley and other staff have done a great job. We're definitely heading in the right direction, and this really is all virus related, and you can't really lay off an elephant, so there are expenses that just continue along regardless, and it's worth supporting, and so I'm fine with this, but it's I just want, but the trends were heading. I mean, they were right. The trends were heading in the right direction, and this deserves our support, and I'm good with this. And the capital projects for the work that the county was so kind to work with us to bond for. Those are all progressing as well. So that's something to look forward to. When we were able to reopen, we'll be bigger and better than ever. With penguins, not puffins.
We'll get those puffins in there for you before you're out, John. I'll just kind of say the same thing as John, because I've always been the guy who kind of picked on the zoo a little bit here. But I think that we've done well here in this trends. We don't need to go back to that slide, but that slide was very encouraging on how we were seeing improvement in attendance. That was always my big deal. Is it seemed like our attendance was flat in the best times in the history of Waco as far as tourism goes. But now we started seeing a little bit of that ticking up before this past spring. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm also encouraged that we saw some that we were seeing in the cost center budget here, some reduction in overhead expenditures in the budget to commensurate with the loss in revenue. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this one we were trying to inch down under $2.5 million support, which again, I'm a big supporter of the zoo, and I think the city does need to make sure we have a world-class zoo. But we're going to be going, unfortunately, the other direction on this in a little bit, up to $3.4 million, right, Paul, to help it out in the budget, which I'm supportive of. Let's keep the zoo going. As John says, it's not like the expenses stop. You got to keep feeding the animals, and, et cetera. But anyway, I think this is a good conservative budget here. Hopefully, once we get through on the other side of COVID, this will blossom.
Yes, sir.
I have some forecasting questions, because with the updated fees, once we are able to have camps and that kind of things, is there an increase in those as well?
Yeah, so for FY21, the 86,000 that you see on the slide is included in those revenue projections. And for the camps, for right now, our preliminary numbers do show the camp revenue coming in for next summer. However, if hopefully COVID doesn't continue on the same trend, if we were to have to cancel those camps again, we would come back to council with a reduction in that revenue forecast.
Okay, thank you.
And just refresh my memory too. I think these fee increases, we already increased them once last summer, right? And this is a little tinkering with them a little bit more. I think that's my record. Okay.
And Jim, that's a great point. I remember us talking about the rate increases last summer, but even with the new rate increases, our zoo cost to get in is still less than a lot of cities our size or similar our size. So we're still, our new fee even now, the proposed new fee now is even still under what you would see in cities a similar size of Waco. So I agree with my fellow council members that I'm definitely for this. I'm noticing a trend that those departments that receive CARES Act, they're either 98 or 100% self-sufficient, but those that did not receive the CARES Act support are needing our help, and we knew that this was going to happen, because of COVID, and we're still going to see the effects of it in 2021. So anything that we can do on our end to help support our tourism and help these organizations that attract tourists, and also for the people that are in our community, I think we need to definitely look into that, because this is just going to be something that we deal with as the months progress, and anything that we need to do as far as budget moving into their budgets, I'm more than in favor of doing that.
Question. I'm assuming that we'll be able to check out passes from the library still for the zoo. Is that correct?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
they're still part of the museum pass that's offered at the libraries.
I think this is a great opportunity to plug that to the community, that with rate increases, you have to be persistent, because I know they go quick. They're a hot ticket, but for members of the community, you can always take advantage of that. The pass is available at our library.
Moving on to the golf fund. The golf department provides a high-quality golf experience for golfers. Due to COVID and FY20, staff is anticipating a revenue reduction in charges for services and net merchandise sales. As a reminder, there is an in and out of general fund transfers in and water transfers out of $1.22 million related to the use of the well located at the golf course. There is anticipated departmental savings in FY20 in the amount of $396,000. For FY21, there are no increases or decreases to base revenues for FY21 as golf is currently experiencing the high volume of golf rounds. There is no proposed increase from the general fund, and the FY21 preliminary ending fund balance is $250,813. For FY21, the golf is 78% operating self-sufficient. As you can see from this visualization, rounds of golf were down by 2,750 when compared to last fiscal years for March through May. So this is illustrating the impact of COVID for that time period.
Here, real quick, what's the history for the general fund support, absent the water and stuff, just general fund support for the golf course? I don't remember it being quite, even I know we're not increasing it year over year, the 678, but that seems higher than I remember it used to be. Is that what have the trends for that have been?
We can get that information for you.
Okay, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Janice,
Thank you.
Let's give them the budget and then the actual.
Okay.
I think we might be remembering is that we performed well. We have a budget number and we have an actual.
That's true.
Let's do both.
We do adjust at times.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what it is. Yes, that would be helpful just to get. Thanks.
It looks like this Holmes. It looks like it was about 700,000 of. If you just look at core operating revenue and core overhead or departmental expenditures, is about 700 short. Which my comment on this, it looks like we're being a little more efficient in our budget for 2021 with the same amount of revenue expected, which I think that's ambitious, but I think got a good operation out there. I think it's logical.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As we talked to the golf director, he educated us that the beginning of the year was the rounds of golf were coming in so high that it kind of offset the COVID impact, and therefore he's anticipating that FY21 would continue the same trend prior to COVID, and what he's seeing currently for the month of June.
Great. Hey, one question is kind of, I don't want it to be aggressive, but on the fiscal year 20 projections, projecting out the end of our fiscal year that ends in September, is that actual through the first quarter or just through the second quarter? In other words, is it actual through December 31st or is it actual through March 31st with the projection of 6 months? Is it a 6 + 6 or a 3 + 9? My question.
If I could go into our projection process a little bit, and I think this answers the question, is we captured the actuals at a certain point in time, which I believe was the beginning of June, and then we talked to all our department heads and saw what was happening for the month of June's current trends, what the data was showing, and then we built in assumptions based on that data. And then we projected it for year-end. We projected our year-end projections as of September 30th. So it's a combination of actuals versus projections of June to October 30th.
So it's 8 + 4. It's actual through May, projected for the June, July, August, September.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's an improvement over last year. I know that we were making these projections off of December first quarter numbers, which seemed odd to me. So I'm happy to hear that we're at least using more current information as we refine these budgets and the projections. Thanks.
Yes, sir. The next funds that we'll be discussing are updates from our June 2nd work session budget discussion. For solid waste, we remain on trend to meet FY20 budgeted revenues. We anticipate FY20 departmental savings. Staff still anticipates a decrease in interest revenue due to market conditions. There's no change in the forward plan solid waste truck purchases in the amount of $1.01 million. Staff continues to review CIP requests, and the solid waste fund is 100% self-sufficient. In the convention center, staff still anticipates finishing around 60% of revenue budget. For FY21, staff continues to review the latest data. We are considering the rebound of the existing hotels in the city, impact of new hotels, and the impact of new hotels on existing hotels. For FY21, we have adjusted the charges for services with a decrease after additional review. That's about $350,000 less in revenue for 21 in the charges for services category. And for FY21, the convention center is 94% operating self-sufficient. There'll be 5 hotels coming to Waco between FY20 and FY21. This will add an additional 567 available rooms, which represents a 12% increase in citywide in room capacity.
And just real quick on those slides, I just want to clarify that even with COVID, the opening dates have not shifted really, correct, in saying that? So this is still the true projected opening date for each of these hotels?
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
For the utilities fund, staff wanted to give an update on the rate process. The amounts in the table reflect the additional revenue necessary to cover both the O&M expenses and debt coverage. NewGen is in the process of finalizing the proposed rate adjustments. Once those rate adjustments are finalized, staff will bring back the fee structure and the schedule back to City Council. This table illustrates the FY20 approved budget for outside agencies. Staff anticipates receiving all funding requests by the end of this week. The FY21 budget will not include the agencies in orange font, which is Caritas of Waco and Hot Goodwill Industries, as FY20 is the last year of a 3-year commitment.
And do those organizations have an opportunity to reapply for another 3 years, or is it just the end of the contract?
I'm not sure about that. Let me find out, and we'll get that information for you, council member.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm trying to remember, is Campus Town, where did it go to? Is it still under Prosper Waco?
It's actually a partnership between Baylor and the city at this point. Baylor holds a full-time position that does the activities for Campus Town, and we pay approximately half of the cost for the position. It still does require for that position to get out to each TSDC, MCC, and Baylor and support all 3 institutions.
For retention, correct?
For retention of graduates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that just didn't end up being a great fit for Prosper Waco, and we were able to go directly to Baylor. But part of the agreement is that they still continue to work with those other education facilities.
All right, this table reflects the latest funding estimate based on our latest property tax roll. As a reminder, the planned CIP amount reflects a shift of approximately 1 penny to debt per fiscal year, and the optional CIP, which is the section at the bottom, reflects approximately half a penny to debt per fiscal year. Based on the first preliminary property tax roll data received in May, the FY20 debt issuance amount was $16.5 million at that time. With the latest property tax roll data, the current estimate for debt issuances in FY21 is $23.5 million. The table reflects a 5-year plan with a 1-year implementation with a focus on FY2021. There is $3 million less in debt issuance when comparing the FY21 planned versus the FY21 optional, which is highlighted in yellow font. As a reminder, via resolution, within the last year, Council has approved funding for the Suspension Bridge and Convention Center HVAC. There's currently 76.77 million in proposed CIP that may be funded by general debt. The CIP proposals include projects from emergency management, engineering, facilities, fire, golf, parks, police, streets, traffic, and zoo. Our plan is to bring back an affordable management reviewed proposed CIP to City Council in July.
And on that revised CIP, I mean, I just want to make sure between the original of the 120 plus million over 5 years and then the current revised that we're looking at here on the general side of about 77. I mean, we need to know what, that 47 million that we're currently discussing at least or considering cutting. I'd like to know just what projects are going to be cut on that. I mean, we need to see what the list is and we need to see what's been taken out of that so we can make sure that that our priorities are being reflected, and there might be something that we deem a higher priority than not. And we need to have that discussion.
I completely agree with Councilmember Kennard.
Yes, sir. We can prepare that list for you.
Thank you.
Isaiah says we prepare that list. I would like to also include the projects that are in progress with FY20 money that haven't necessarily hit construction yet, so that we can see how the program is progressing. I think Councilmember Holmes was interested in that, an update on that as well. Let's just package that all together and bring it.
Yeah, agreed. Bradley, you took the words out of my mouth there, because I was also not only last year's, but I mean, there's still 2017, 2018, well, maybe not 17, but there's certainly projects that were anticipated and delayed or, take a period of years to finish some of these bigger CIP projects. So yeah, if we could see all of that, in the big 30,000 foot picture of everything and how this is going from 123 to 77. I mean, it's logical that we need to kind of be watching what we're doing here, and with debt. But still, yeah, I think the council, at least the members here, have all articulated that we'd like to see what get down in the weeds on this and which projects are in the middle of it, which projects are half done, which projects are getting sort of pushed out. And I'm sure that we'll all come to a mutual conclusion on what needs to stay in or what needs to go out. But yeah, the better detail we can see on that, I think the better we can talk to our constituents on why the projects aren't in there. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Before we move on, Jim made a very good point about where the projects are in their, where they are in actuality. Because if it's something that is one of council's priority but hasn't yet begun, then we can make educated, decisions on should we continue to advance or should we table. But this is a fantastic opportunity for him to get yet another chart.
We expect that to be a full-colored Gantt chart, following Isaiah's.
We'll do our best, sir. All right. Due to the new SB2 requirements, a deadline extension from the county, and the uncertainty of COVID, staff is recommending the alternate date schedule, which is the middle column in the table. Moving forward with the alternate schedule will allow staff to gather additional financial data such as the July sales tax collections that reflect May activity and the July 25th certified property tax roll. So we would be following our proposed budget 2 weeks later, starting on July 31st, present the proposed budget, and then the July 25th and August 4th dates will stay the same, and as well as the August 11th budget and audit meeting. And then another change would be from the August 18th to September 1st would be our public hearing on the proposed budget, the budget adoption, and a public hearing on tax rate. And then our final change would be instead of having an August 25th special meeting, we'd have the special meeting on September 8th. And at that time, we would do our emergency reading of the tax rate ordinance. Our next scheduled meeting is another budget discussion update scheduled on July 14th, budget and audit. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and we welcome any questions from the mayor and city council.
Will we be discussing this at all on this at our regular scheduled council meeting next week? Will there be any updates necessary then, or any particular funds we might want to do? Or are we going to wait for everything until the 14th?
My recommendation is wait till the 14th. As we gather more data, the more we can come back to you with a better projection for FY20 year end and a better projection for FY21 budget.
Okay.
Well, I was going to make a request as we are talking about the new rates for water and sewer, et cetera, things like that. I would like, and this is something that I thought about last year when I went through my first budget round. As staff is making recommendations for price increase, I would like to see examples of how that affects the average user. So for example, if they're paying, I don't know, $50 for water right now, and with the new price increase, they're going to pay $60 or something like that. I would like to just see an average of how much the average household cost would increase with the new proposed rates, if possible, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
This is Holmes. And as we kind of have gone through all the different cost centers now, I do appreciate staff's work on the overhead management, because as we're seeing these revenues come down, I think almost without exception, we're seeing overhead come down as well, or a conscious effort to bring the overhead down and those kind of things aren't easy. I've been through businesses where you're having to make cuts and cut out expenses, and it's not fun, but I think we're being reactive and intelligent and thoughtful about how we bring those cost center expenses into line and maximize the taxpayers' balance sheet here. I did have a question, two more questions really on the tax rate. I know that there's been some discussion about how we're going to treat property taxes, and are we going to move that around, or what are we going to do? Just that we're going to have to fill a hole on the sale. There's kind of two major parts of it, right? Two major revenue sources, at least in the general fund, of sales tax and property tax. And as we see that sales tax dropping because of our tourism dollars aren't coming in quite like they were, although they're not, as bad as we thought, at least for the first couple months, that we are going to have to be very thoughtful about how we fill that back in with really the only other part is that property tax. So as we get through this budget over the next few weeks, I just want to be thoughtful about how we think about what it means to keep that property tax the same, and our obligation to sort of keep best-in-class services going for the city. The last point I want to make is, and I know that we look at this annually, and I just don't want it to creep up on us, but the fees by department schedule that we look at every year and approve adjustments on these several pages of them. I've got them here. Mm-hmm. And I want to stay ahead of this year on what an adjustment in those fees means to revenue from a macro level. In other words, adjusting some inspection fee from $150 to $175. What does that mean on revenue, projected revenue for that department? It's something that I think is we need to know how everything connects. And it seems like it's been something that's been missing since I've been on council. I hope we've made progress from last year to this year. As you ask us to make as you make recommendations on fee changes, I want to see what that effect is on a global basis. So Bradley, some of the older guys in the room know what I'm talking about. Paul and Isaiah, so I'll give you a freebie on this one, because
Paul and Isaiah, if you could make a chart that has the 25 top used fees, the number of times it's used, and the dollars it generates, that'd be great.
Yeah, you crystallized my thought there, Bradley. Thank you.
So there you go. There's the follow-up, Holmes.
All right. Thanks.
Will do.
That's all I had.
Any further?
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Appreciate y'all's ongoing work to work through this challenging time.
Mayor, we do have, we were talking about sales tax a moment ago. We do have a few slides. Paul Diaz is going to join the dais and walk us through really a deeper dive than, as each month goes by, we get a little more information. And that's one of the reasons we showed you that budget calendar sliding back a couple of weeks on the filing, because that'll allow us to get July's sales tax returns in. But wanted to give Paul a moment here to brief the council on sales tax and kind of where he sees it going.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's great to be in Waco, and it's great to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which happens to be sales tax analysis. So just to give some background, I've been doing sales tax analysis for the better part of a decade, and the main tool that we use is a confidential report from the state. From there, we've developed an Excel-based model, and that's able to give us some really great insight in terms of specific sectors, specific areas of the town, and it allows us to bring forward a pretty accurate sales tax model. As I started diving into the data for the city of Waco, I wanted to first start with what's the history of sales tax in Waco. And so I pulled the actuals for the last 10 years, and you can see that the news coming out of the recession has been really great for Waco, seeing growth around 4 to 6% most years. And you'll notice that in FY 2019, you ended your actuals at $40.6 million. This is actually above the budget that we had set in FY 2020. So our starting point for 20 is actually a little bit better than what we have been budgeting for. I'll mention that because you'll see that here in a minute. We're kind of starting from a better position than we budgeted from. So as I do sales tax, I want to kind of throw out three big ideas for you all. The first one is correlation. Second one is a thing called a Linest function. And then the last one is regressions. We do this both in the aggregate and at the sector level. So correlation. I mentioned I've been doing sales tax analysis for a while. And one time when I was looking at the top 20 cities and the city I was working for at the time and the surrounding cities, I noticed that all of them share a very similar pattern. And that the first month of your fiscal year, and here I show it as December, that's just when we actually get the collections. I will change that to October moving forward so we're all on the same page. But I noticed that October, usually you'll get about 7.5% of all of your sales tax in that month. The next month, your month 2, follows a similar trend. And then the third month is when you see the Christmas and holiday sales come in. And what's very interesting, if I run this correlation for the city of Waco or my former employer, city of Georgetown or city of Austin or whomever, it all kind of follows the same pattern. And it occurred to me that if we're able to recognize a pattern, we should be able to project pretty well. And so there's a very simple calculation that we do. We take the aggregate number and the percentage that we're going to have in each month, take the number 1 and divide it by that. And we get a multiplier amount. So the very first month, we take that amount and multiply it by 13.33%. Then you'll notice in the next month, the error or the multiplier cuts in half. So our error cuts in half. And by around the 5th or 6th month of the year, we're pretty locked in on what we're going to finish the current year at in terms of the multiplier. So as an example, I ran this with City of Waco data, FY 2019 data, and this is just aggregate data. This isn't confidential data at all. And you'll notice that in the May timeframe, which would have been my about 6-month mark, the model projected that we were going to be at $40.57 million. We actually ended the year at $40.6 million. So it's good to see that the proof of concept translates not just from my previous cities, but also this city. The correlation model is one that you'll hear as we go through budget and as we do quarterly updates. The further we get into the fiscal year, the more accurate it comes. But that's just one view of the model that we use. The other is what's called a Linest function. If you'll remember back to your algebra days in high school, the slope of the line. And so we do a 6-month, a 12-month, and an 18-month trend. And the 6-month is always the most reactionary. It's going to be able to see when the booms and the busts are going. So this is actual City of Waco data, and you can see that the impact of COVID, and it made the Linest negative. That means that we're slowing down a lot. I will continue to update this model because what I want to show is when the Linest on the 6-month flattens out, that's showing that we're starting to make progress back through COVID. Typically, there's a longer lag with the 12-month and the 18th month. And if we all see them moving in the same direction, that means that we have consistent growth for the last 18 months. And you kind of see that in the data in the previous years. So we'll continue to update this Linest to make sure that we have a flattening of that curve, and that will be kind of the first spark of showing that we're through COVID. And then the third idea is regression. And to get our regression analysis, we really needed to know kind of where are we at right now. So as a year-to-year comparison, if we go 7 months of the fiscal year to the previous fiscal year, we are down negative 0.07%. So just a slight change, just under 16,000. If I run it for the previous 2 or 3 months, the city of Waco was up 4%, 5%, 6% at any given point. So you were following that trend that you were seeing in FY19 was continuing into FY20. So positive news there. I mentioned that the budget number was actually less than what we had in for actuals in the previous year. So our budget number was a little bit conservative. And so when we compare our actuals year to date to budget, we're actually to the good, almost 4%. Because we are starting ahead of where we were, that mitigates some of the effects that COVID has. The last part down there, you can see the month-to-month comparison, and you can see COVID had about a 15% increase or decrease month-to-month. As part of our overall analysis, we not only look at the top 20 cities in Texas, but we look at all cities in Texas, both individual and the aggregate. And 15% was about what we were seeing from the top 20 cities and all cities rolled up. So we think that this month is probably the worst month that we're going to see because this is the full impact after everything closed. From this point on, hopefully there's no outbreak that closes everything down, but this probably is the low point. The graph to the right there shows your sectors. And so anytime I do sales tax analysis, it's really just an effort in variance analysis. I know that retail, food, information, and manufacturing are going to be between 70 and 75% of your total sales tax. And every month to month, they should be pretty close to that amount. So again, now that we understand that that's a pattern, that's what should be happening, we can do different types of regression analysis to not only take the individual sectors and multiply that out to get an overall number, but also compare that to our year-end aggregate models as well. In total, there's 4 big models that we use, and all of them are showing that relative to budget, we're in really good shape. Much like with the 6-month Linest function, the 6-month linear is going to be a little bit more reactionary to the bad news that we received in the sales tax. But all of them have us finishing higher than our budgeted number, just because our starting point was better. We're still working through the confidential report that we got a few days ago. So not able to do the sector analysis yet, but I was able to do kind of what if we had a 10% increase for the rest of the year, or we had a 15% decrease for the rest of the year. And all of those came in right around the $39.5 million mark. If you'll remember, our adopted budget rate was $39.1 million. Now, prior to COVID, I believe as part of a quarterly report, they were showing a projection of $43.1 million, so reflecting that good news that they were seeing in the trend. And then I believe in April, staff gave you an updated COVID projection saying somewhere between $31 and $37 million, depending on various factors. In the June timeframe, staff brought back a budget amendment and revised the budget down to 37.5. But as I'm looking at the data, and this is kind of a placeholder as we get more data in, I believe what we've got in the current projection is kind of what the original budget that we started with. If you'll remember, that is about a $1.5, $1.6 million decrease from where we were at in FY 2019. But I feel that is a conservative number. As Deputy City Manager said, we are still working the numbers, and with that revised schedule that Isaias put forward, that will allow us to get another data point. On July the 8th, the state will release the next round of sales tax data, and we'll get the confidential report hopefully about 7 days after that. And we'll continue to work through the sales tax analysis and incorporate that data both into our year-end projections as well as our estimates for FY 2021. With that, Mayor, I'll be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
I like this guy. Great presentation. Welcome to Waco. And thanks. I mean, that all makes sense. When you talk regression and you start talking numbers, you're talking my game. So this is fantastic. And I mean, the only, just to encapsulate and summarize, it sounds like our worst fears that we had a couple months ago in terms of where our budget would end up with our sales taxes won't come to pass, and that we are actually not in great shape, but in pretty good shape and much better than we thought we were going to be. So I think that's heartening news, and I appreciate the report. And looking forward to much more.
Yeah, this Holmes, I'll echo John a little bit there. Yeah, looking at 3 different models, correlation, Linest, and regression, and then taking the average of those, I think is a cool way of looking at it. Remind me, so it's 39 million is this year. Remind me what we're budgeting for next year again. I wrote that down, but I didn't bring that.
So
For 2020.
For 2020, your original budget was 39.
Right.
Staff brought an amendment to lower that by $1.5 million in June. And then the 2021 number we are working on right now.
Okay.
Wait for that next data point.
Yeah, okay. We haven't landed on anything yet there. But you're right. The July deal was coming out the 17th, I believe. Is that? Or
the big aggregate number comes out on the 8th. We'll get the confidential report about a week later.
Good. I really do like this kind of analysis. It's great. I appreciate you guys.
Paul, I have no questions, but I did want to thank you for the presentation. Very easy to understand, very easy to read. And to my fellow council members, of course you like Paul. He's a university graduate. So
Once a Trojan, always a Trojan.
There you go, baby. There you go.
All right, any further questions? Well, thank you. Welcome back to Waco, and you got to let me know where you got that face mask.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else, Bradley?
No, sir, not today.
Okay, well, there being no further business, we will adjourn the meeting at 2:33 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you all.